Extra, extra, read all about it. The tragic death of Phar Lap strikes Australia. Tears, disbelief, headlines everywhere. This is the story of Phar Lap, the thoroughbred racehorse who galloped into the hearts of Australians in 1929 and was soon to become so much more than just a horse. Nobody knew what a great impact this horse was going to have on Australians, and more than that, nobody knew how much they would grow to love this magnificent racehorse. Most people describe Phar Lap as the mighty chestnut gelding whose victories lifted the hearts and spirits of a generation when they needed it most, during the tough times of the Great Depression. Although Phar Lap's death was never a solved mystery, although whether Phar Lap was more Australian or New Zealand racehorse, the fact that he was the most famous horse to ever race in Australia is certain. No horse stirs the passion in Australian and New Zealand racing as much as Phar Lap. Born in New Zealand in 1926, American Mr. Davies bought the horse for the reasonable price of 160 guineas. However, on the horse's arrival in Sydney, Davies was disappointed with the awkward horse. He looked nothing like a champion. In 1928, Phar Lap got his name after the Thai word for lightning. A man who was keen on horses saw the horse training in Centennial Park and called him Phar Lap. The name stuck. Horse racing has always been a favourite pastime for Australians, being a popular social event. In the earlier years, when travel was limited and there were fewer leisure activities, the races were a very popular attraction. During the Great Depression, Australians were desperate for something which would help them forget all their troubles and hardships. The races, and one extraordinary horse, did just that and more. In 1929, Tommy Woodcock was employed as Phar Lap's full-time strapper, and from then on they were virtually inseparable. Tommy would even sleep in the stables with Phar Lap before big races. In 1930, Phar Lap ran in the Sydney Spring Racing Carnival and won all 4 of his races. Although one of the greatest achievements of Phar Lap was winning the Melbourne Cup in 1930. 70,000 people stood to cheer Phar Lap to victory in the depth of the Depression. In 1931, Phar Lap won 9 of his 10 races, and the public started betting on him because of the near certainty that he would win. This was of course great during the Depression, as the amount of money being spent was low, and unemployment was at its peak at almost 32% of the population. Winning money on betting also lifted the spirits of the public, and they went home feeling a little bit happier. In 1931, Phar Lap left Australia for the United States to continue his racing career. He had run his last race in Australia. In 1932, Phar Lap ran the Agua Caliente Handicap in the US. Australians were listening to the race on radio and heard as Phar Lap won the race by 3 lengths, taking home a prize money of $100,000. Nobody knew this was to become Phar Lap's last victory. In fact, it was Phar Lap's last race. Just 1 month after the Agua Caliente, on a ranch in San Francisco, Phar Lap fell very ill, and tragically, on the 5th of April 1932, he died. Phar Lap left Earth in the arms of his strapper and best friend, Tommy Woodcock. Nobody knows for sure what caused Phar Lap's sudden death. 2 autopsies failed to identify the cause. Some believe that his death was an innocent tragedy, or that the trees and plants around him had been sprayed with an insecticide which was poisonous to horses. Others believe that he collected a bacterial disease while travelling between different climates. Some even suspected that Phar Lap had been killed by criminals. The news of Phar Lap's death shocked Australia. People felt sad, confused and angry all at once. Letters were sent to Phar Lap's trainer, flags were flown at half-mast, newspaper headlines were everywhere, and radio stations produced emotional tributes. Phar Lap had symbolised hope in a time when Australia was running out, and he gave the nation something to be proud of. The Australian people identified with Phar Lap when most were battling the hardships of unemployment and poverty. Today he resides in the Melbourne Museum as the most popular exhibit, and his famous 6.2 kilo large heart is in the National Museum in Canberra. Phar Lap, the horse that will forever be regarded as the people's champion.